Welcome to another episode of Software Architecture and Stream. Today we are talking in English because our guest is Aino today. Hi, Aino.
Hi.
This is an episode in preparation for the Software Architecture Gathering, which takes place at the end of November. And we also have a code for you to get a discount on your card. I will show it in the bottom of our thing, but so that was the advertisement which had to be done. Sorry. If you have any questions on our topic, please don't hesitate to ask them in our comment section. So the YouTube questions or YouTube chat and the Twitch chat. And now let's start with our teamwork topic. Aino. Hi, I'm so happy to see you again. You've been here very many years ago with me. So please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, hi Lisa, it's good to see you again. So the last time I spoke with you, Lisa, on this channel was it 4.5 years ago, where we talked about retrospectives, about my book about retrospective facilitation and anti-patterns and stuff like that. So to introduce myself as short as I can, I am Danish, I live in Denmark, I have a PhD in computer science with a focus on design patterns and architectural patterns from 2001, and then I've worked in industry and academia back and forth until I decided to have my own company and become an independent consultant about 14 years ago. And since then, I've been working both as an external lecturer at the university, but also as a consultant in the IT industry. And some more than 15 years ago, I started facilitating a lot, especially retrospectives. So I've been working a lot with teams with retrospective facilitation, but also with all other sorts of facilitation.
Cool. And today we are going to talk about teamwork, and it happens to be one part of your workshop at Software Architecture Gathering, I guess. So we haven't told the title of your workshop yet, even if it's so cool, because it's what we should have learned from Lord of the Rings. So
yes,
if people are interested, maybe there are some places left to fill in.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, so I'm going to give that talk, what we should have learned from the Lord of the Rings. And I'm doing that because I really like the story in the Lord of the Rings. And I also, when I want to talk about something, when I want to explain something, it's easier if I can explain it as a story, because then it's easier for people to remember and it's easier for people to follow along. So I've sort of just wrapped a lot of stuff about teamwork and software development into the Lord of the Rings story. And a big part of what I'm talking about is actually teamwork.
Okay. But why are we going to talk about teamwork today? Because so our title is pretty controversial, which we used, and there are so many things about teamwork. Do we really have to add something to all this information outside?
I think we do, because even though there's all these YouTube videos and all these books and everything about teamwork and how to improve your teamwork and team building and psychological safety, it seems it's still difficult for people with the teamwork for various reasons that we can talk about throughout today. We still need to talk about teamwork, because it is still one of the things where people are really struggling for various reasons to make it work out there.
Have you seen a progress in the last years of people handling teamwork? So are people getting better in teamwork because there's so many information outside?
Well, one thing that I have to say as a disclaimer before I answer this is that because I'm an independent consultant, and when people call me to come and help them with the teamwork, it's not because the teamwork is going really well. Yeah. It's because they need help. So I think that the way that I see how teamwork is and how it is changing is probably a bit colored by that bias here, that I see a specific kind of teams. Now, that being said, I don't think that it's getting a lot better in the last few years. I think that if we look further back, maybe 15, 20 years back, I think that there has been a progression, especially because of the focus on psychological safety. And that focus has only been there because some people could say it's actually good for the bottom line of the company. You can actually make more money for the company if you have psychological safety in the team. So it's a bit sad that that's what helped, but I mean, who cares why? It helped. and it has made people more, at least generally, accepting that psychological safety is something that you cannot ignore in a team. So
how can turn on with your answer, sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that, so if I look at it over the past 15, 20 years, things have definitely progressed, but not in the last few years, not even with all the AI help for teamwork or stuff like that that's out there.
Okay. How does psychological safety, sorry, that's a tongue breaker, so to say, and influence teamwork? Do you have any examples, practical examples, like something which is more visual to me? So psychological safety is a very abstract wording.
Yeah. So psychological safety, one of my friends, Gitte Klitgaard, who's talking a lot about psychological safety, she told me that psychological safety is not about always being comfortable and everybody being nice to each other. It's about being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And I think that stressing the fact that you should strive to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation is very, very important. So it can be uncomfortable to get feedback from your colleagues. It can be uncomfortable to get like a code review that's not completely positive. But it is important to try to create an atmosphere where it's okay to feel uncomfortable, so that you're comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. So that you could say, for instance, if you get the review back, you have to think about, how do I word this review so that it's less like you're always being an idiot about this, or why don't you ever learn to do back recursion or whatever, that you focus on how to improve this, being a little bit more constructive in your feedback. So that's one side of it, that people try to make it a more comfortable situation, but also that when people do receive feedback that does not make them happy, that it's actually okay to feel bad, and it's okay to say, oh, that made me feel bad, and you can make that comfortable, that you can say that you feel bad about it. And I think that one of the things that really helps in psychological safety, in my experience, is having recurring retrospectives done well. Because one of the things about retrospectives is the prime directive that Norm Kurth came up with. Remember, everybody did the best they could with what they knew at the time, the skills they had, with the time they had, with the situation at hand. Everybody did the best they could. And if you can if you can work that into the retrospectives on a regular basis, that means that people get the experience that they can say something that didn't go well, and people react in a nice, calm way, so it's more comfortable to talk about something uncomfortable. And if you train that in the retrospectives, you can use that muscle, so to speak, outside the retrospective. So to me, the retrospectives is about training the muscle of being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, training the muscle of acknowledging each other, giving each other compliments, but also sometimes a bit constructive feedback, in a sense, in a good way. So, and I normally say when I talk about it that it's psychological safety. It's like when you've been with a spouse for some time and you get to the point in the partnership where you can now fart in front of each other. So to me, that's sort of when you get to be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, where you feel like, I'm safe enough in this relationship. I trust that this will not be ruined by being a human being. And I think that thing about allowing yourself to be a human being with your feelings and almost always also your biology, if that's accepted, then you can bring your whole self at work, and that's, to me, psychological safety.
This is interesting. I have two questions. One is very short. So what's a good period for retrospectives? So do I have it to do every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4? And how long should they be?
Oh, there's a lot of debate about that. So if you have a team who are working together full time on a shared goal, and you are about 7 to 10 people, I would say it would be healthy to have like a 90-minute retrospective every other week. And the reason why I say that is every other week, because then it's easier to remember what actually happened. If you do it every month, it can be more difficult to remember what happened 3 weeks ago. That, of course, you can remedy by having some sort of real-time timeline where people can add post-its along the sprint. But another reason for having it every other week is that you don't save things up for the retrospective for very long. Some people find it difficult to talk about difficult things and they save it up for the retrospective. It should, of course, be so that you can just talk about it whenever it pops up. But for some people, it's easier to have the structure, and then they don't have to wait for too long. When I talk about retrospectives, I often talk about, well, in an ideal world, we would need retrospectives because people would be talking about it whenever it came up. In an ideal world, we didn't need to structure it because when people needed to reflect, they would go together and reflect about what happened. But we're not in an ideal world. The reason why I say 90 minutes and not just an hour or even 30 minutes or 20 minutes that some people say is enough for a retrospective is because I think that there are so many things that should happen in a retrospective in order for it to actually be worthwhile. So you have to set the stage. You have to look back at the action points from the last retrospective, talk about whether they got implemented, if they got implemented, whether they had the effect that you expected, talk about maybe what's the theme of this retrospective, is there anything in particular we should talk about right now? But it could also, like, you have that chance where everybody gets to say something. That takes time. And then you gather data, and of course you can shorten it by gathering data beforehand, but in my experience, then maybe half the people will have gathered the data beforehand and the other half still needs time to do it. And then you really need the time to generate insights, and that is to take time to actually look at the cause analysis, try to tell the real stories about what happened and what caused this, so that when you go into decide what to do phase, that you are actually working on the problems and not just the symptoms of the problems. And then you have to close the retrospective again. Instead of just running away like, oh, it's over, we found 3 action points. Look at the action points, see, are they actually concrete enough to get started? Are they small enough to do within a sprint or until the next retrospective? Or should we make a bigger plan? Do we have somebody who is responsible? What are the accept criteria? When will we look back on it? And if you don't do these things, if you don't really give it the time, then the brains of the people do not have time to reflect. The brains of the people do not have time to generate insight. And if you're not diligent about the action points, then they probably won't get done. And then it will feel like the retrospective is a waste of time. But of course, everything could happen. I mean, I'm just saying 2 weeks, 1.5 hours, because that's what I like. Some people like other things.
Yeah, we have a question on this. So, so I'm so bad at other languages, but Jean-Pierre Lambert is happy to see you. This was his first message, and you're saying that it's better to do retrospectives often and without waiting. Then why not? What about weekly?
Yeah, that's a good question. Why not have a weekly retrospective, and indeed, why not have a daily retrospective? I know that some people who are doing ensemble programming, they actually can have a retrospective every morning because they just work together every day and they talk about what worked, what didn't work yesterday, how can we improve the way that we're working so that we don't have to wait for a retrospective. I think that if you have the retrospective every week, one thing that could happen is that people are complaining that they are spending too much time in the retrospective, because you don't want to just take half the time for that retrospective, because again, the time that's needed for the brain to go through these processes is the time it takes for brains to go through these processes. So I would be worried about having it every week because people will think that it's too much. And also maybe if you have it every week, it should fit with something else that you do. It's like the cadence should be like, is it a sprint you have? If you have weekly sprints, then maybe it makes sense because then you have something to talk about. If you have it every week and you have no sprints, or you have 2 or 3 week sprints, then it would be a good idea to say that we have it every week because we've gone through X amount of stories or spent this much time together, so that we sort of have a wrapped up thing to talk about. I don't know if that answered the question.
I think so. So I feel like you've answered it, but maybe Jean-Pierre can tell us if he's happy with the answer. And while he's typing, I will go on. So my second question will push us a bit away from. So Jean-Pierre is answering. So I will wait for a minute. In my experience, we were doing Scrum with 1 week sprints, indeed.
Yeah.
So
then it makes sense, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to push us a bit more into the teamwork direction without having the retrospectives in mind, because you already addressed the problem when a problem occurs, and I will wait to the next retrospective to address it because I feel more safe in the retrospective environment. I will address the problem, and it's a bit late, I think. So nobody really remembers. And let's say we don't have retrospectives every 2 weeks. We have maybe once a month a retrospective, or even on a 2-monthly basis. So how could I improve myself in expressing what I had the problem? So problem is a hard work, but what I felt in a situation to a colleague of mine to improve our teamwork. Sorry for the totally
So
bad
just
phrase.
to make sure that I understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is that if we're facing the problem that we have retrospectives only every 2 months and people are afraid of raising issues until we are in the safe space of the retrospective, how can people make it easier for them to be safe in raising these issues?
Yes, that's
Okay, so there are some different ways of doing this. When people are afraid of raising issues, it's mostly because they have some bad experiences with raising issues or causing conflict. So they have some sort of knee-jerk reaction that makes them worried that if they say something negative or they say something bad, that people will react in a strong way. So what I would suggest is that if that is your problem, that you should to train your brain, try saying really small negative things that you think will not cause a big problem, and then maybe really noticing that nobody dies, you're not getting fired from raising this, and just really let yourself experience and feel that it's not dangerous to say something negative. Just start with a very, very small thing. And then we have the other type of people who are not afraid of conflict, who are not afraid of saying something negative. It might sometimes be good for them to reflect what's happening if I'm saying something negative 10 times a day about the framework that we need to do, or the manager, or whatever. They should reflect also on what happens when they say that. They should try to think about how do people answer this? Are they smiling in an awkward way? Are they turning their back to me? Are they changing the subject, or are they diving into my rant about these negative things? So I would say that both for people who find it too difficult and for people who find it too easy to complain, they should actually try to really be aware and reflect on what happens when they talk about negative things, because they can both be helped, but in different directions. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, and it's also good. It's a good way to move on, because so you talked about reflection, and I for myself think that self-reflection is one of the best things you can do in private and work life for your life. So it's pretty important to do so. But I think not everybody has this opinion. So maybe people don't know how to self-reflect, or people don't see the advantage of self-reflection. But in fact, for work and teamwork, it's pretty useful to have this reflection going on. How can we as a team decide on we want to reflect for ourselves? So I don't know how to express it, but I hope you will understand my thought. So I would like to implement a self-reflection as a tool for better teamwork.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that not just the reflection in the team that takes place in a retrospective, but that people actually train to retrospect or reflect on their own individually. I think that one of the problems with that is that, at least I, for one, I did not grow up in a culture where reflection was a big thing. I was trained in the school systems not to reflect, but to look like to the future. Like, okay, I need a better grade next year. I need to be able to run faster. I need to be able to blah, blah, blah. There wasn't much training in the reflection of what is actually what's the cause for me not running faster? What's the cause for me not getting a good grade in this? And that meant that I myself and other people would sometimes really push themselves against their nature or against their situation to achieve what other people are achieving, because they weren't reflecting on how they could achieve and how much they could achieve. So I think that it's a big battle to take, to try to convince people to reflect on their own if they really are not trained in it. But I think that one way of doing it would be to introduce it in a retrospective, because, as I said before, for some people that's a safe setting to reflect. And then instead maybe of taking this as a team retrospective where we're reflecting on the teamwork, maybe we could start gathering data in silence on our own, reflecting on our own last week or yesterday, or reflecting on conflicts, or reflecting on, I don't know, how to write a peer review or something like that. How do I react when people do that? How do I react in this situation? How do people react when I say that? So I would suggest to try it out in a very small setting where they reflect only over a day or a week about themselves, and then really help them to trust that they do not have to share all their reflections with everybody else, but they can if they want to. And then there will always be somebody who shares their reflections because they like to talk about themselves and they've got some really good reflections. So there will always be somebody who would want to share. And then the others can hear, oh, he or she, they said that. And oh, no, that's actually not too far away from where I am. So maybe we're struggling with the same problems. And then when they notice that self-reflection is not that dangerous, and that other people are doing it and other people can get something out of it, and also that other people are maybe learning the same thing about themselves that I'm learning when I'm reflecting, it becomes less dangerous. And so again, it's about removing the fear. I think that a lot of reasons for people not doing sort of the best for themselves is because they are worried about what other people's reaction will be. They're worried about if they'll lose some benefits, or if they'll lose some trust or power or something like that.
Yeah, I had to laugh because when I was little, I think the most heard sentence by my mother was, so every time I had something, my mother said, "But what will the neighbors say?"
Yes.
And so you're taught to be conscious about what will other people think and say and do, and so on. And then you stop doing everything because what will Aino say if I will ask her this question? So, but it's not that great to live in such a way. But I think it changes right now. But it has been in this way for such a long time. So it needs some time to be changed.
Definitely. And I think there's a gender thing here as well. That at least me, as a growing up as a girl and as a young woman, I very much wanted to fit into the social hierarchy of the female group, and that made me very self-conscious about whether I would create conflict or whether I would sound negative or something like that. So it's been a struggle for me to learn to find these things and feel safe to talk about these things.
Yeah, I feel you. So you talked about retrospective, and now I have another question, because I don't know if the gender thing is is going in this as well, but I have the I not the opinion, so I made the Erfahrung. So Erfahrung is not there.
Experience.
An experience. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's so good to have you here. You speak German, so it's much more easier for me.
At least I understand it.
Yeah. So I made the experience that in a team, there's always someone who hates retrospectives and thinks that they are not worth it. So so you also said when the action items are not addressed, and when there's no real plan afterwards, this makes people that feel like it wasn't worth it. But even if these points are addressed and are working well, I remember I think in every single team I've been in, and with every and I've talked to so many people, and there are some people who hate retrospectives and think that they are yeah,
waste of time.
Waste of time. Yeah, I wanted to say shit, but it's a live stream, so I didn't want to. So
So you didn't say it.
so I didn't say it. Is there something that we, as people who think that retrospectives are worth it, can do about for them to open their eyes, or do you think it's something they have to experience for themselves, or do you think there are people who never will ever love retrospectives?
I'm quite certain that there will be some people who will never love retrospectives. But that being said, there are some things that can be done. I think that when you will have somebody who hates retrospectives, and I agree that there's definitely a pattern there, it can be interesting to figure out why they dislike it so much, because it could be because they've had a bad experience with a retrospective before, where they felt like they were under attack, or they felt like they had to admit to being stupid or something like that. So it can be like that they've had a really bad experience before. It could also be that they really think that the work that we do as software developers is just typing the code in, and every communication, everything else, it's administration that the project manager should make. And I've also heard people say, I don't really care how my colleagues feel about things. I don't really care about who they are as people. I'm just interested in actually getting my work done. And I can understand that. There can be several psychological reasons for feeling that as well. But I think that if you are working in a setting where you are working in a team, it is probably because there is a reason for that. We can come back to that later about the focus on teams, which is maybe not always healthy. But if we assume that they work in a team and they are a team, then one of the things about having a team is like it's a shared goal, and you should work together so that the sum of you becomes bigger than the individual people. A bit like an octopus, right? But an octopus has 8 tentacles, and each tentacle has a part of the brain and can actually think individually. But together as an octopus, they are even better than if they were just 8 arms flopping around on their own. They can do much more together. And it's the same with a team. So if they are in a situation where they are working in a team for a reason, somebody should talk to them one-on-one and figure out what is actually the problem. Like, what are you worried about? What will come out? Is it because you don't remember what happened? Is it because you don't know how to reflect? Because we can teach you that. And one of the things that I often use with people like that is a pattern from Linda Rising's first book, Fearless Change, with Marilyn Manns. And one of the patterns in the Fearless Change, the first book, is this about the champion skeptic. Because sometimes people have taken on the role as being a skeptic. Their skepticism has created their career. They are skeptic. They're the one which the bullshit threshold is very low, right? So they can see through things, and that has helped them so much in their career, and it has given them the street cred that they have, that they are skeptic. For better and for worse, it can also be so bad that the reason why they have the street cred is because people are afraid of them. But let's imagine that they have the street cred because they're really good at being skeptical, and that skepticism has helped them and the team and the organization for years. That is a role that they do not want to lose. And sometimes that skepticism can be put on the retrospectives. And in those cases, what you can do is that you can have a one-on-one with them and tell them, well, I appreciate your skepticism and I need your help. Because since we are a team, we need to continuously improve the way we work together. Because if we don't add energy to a system, entropy will arrive and we will be worse. We have to add some energy into this system. One of the ways of adding energy into the system is to continue to reflect and to learn how we can improve this. So we have to do this one way or the other. And the way that we've decided to do this now is with retrospectives. And I'm the one facilitating them. So I need your help. Can we, I've made a plan for the next retrospective. Can we go through that? And you help me figure out how can we improve this plan? So that it's not so much a waste of a time. But you have to set the limits. So you have to say, I would like your help to improve it, but we cannot make it shorter than like an hour and a quarter. We cannot just cancel it. We need to have it every 2 weeks. Inside those boundaries, how can we make this more beneficial? And then maybe they say, well, we should only talk about how to improve our code. And that could be something that, well, we say the next retrospective, when we gather data, we ask people to bring some code, and we can look at maybe, I don't know, legacy or hotspots or something like that. And that's what we do. And then we work, and that's a coding retrospective. And that's something that they can see a value in. And you might think then as a facilitator, how are we going to talk about teamwork and communication? But actually, like the code quality is also a part of things you can improve in a retrospective. Plus, when within half the retrospective, where we are only looking at the code and refactoring and stuff, we will be talking about communication. We will be talking about, oh, but I didn't know we had time to change that. Oh yeah, but we do. We just have to ask for it, or just have to do it, pretend you're doing something else, whatever. Oh, I didn't know that we could actually do it like that. Oh, I didn't know that part of the software was finished. Oh, I didn't know that part was not finished. Oh, I didn't know that was tested together. And then even though we are sort of starting with something very code-centric and very technical and very, not bullshit, or we're just going to the important part of software development, which is the code, we will have a lot of interesting discussions about why the code looks as it does. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense and is a good advice. And we have a comment in the comments. So obviously, I'm so sorry. Sometimes the words are missing, and then it's only.
You're doing well.
So okay, thank you. So Werner T is writing, I think it depends on the personality of a person. For introvert people like me, all the Scrum ceremonies are really exhausting. I ever had to do in my 25-year-long experience of developing.
Yeah, so I understand that. Yeah, for really introverted people, being in all these Scrum ceremonies can be exhausting. Definitely. And I think that if it really is so exhausting for you to be in the Scrum ceremonies, you should talk to the Scrum Master or your manager or somebody like that and say, it really is taking a toll on me that is impairing my work. So could we say that I'm just part of this or this or this? I think, for instance, that a retrospective should not be something that you have to go through. It should be something that you want to go to. Because if you have some people that you're forcing to have in retrospectives, they'll just be sitting there with crossed arms and finding faults in what's happening, right? We want people in the retrospective who really are interested in improving and learning. And then if those people never come to the retrospectives, maybe talk to them about, instead of saying, why don't you come to the retrospectives, talk to them about, do you think we have any problems in the way that we're working? Do you think we have any problems in the way that we are reviewing or testing or integrating or creating the right code for the architecture or whatever? There will always be something that they think could be better. And then you could suggest, should we not have sort of just with the people who are interested in this, have a conversation about this? And then you can run that conversation like a retrospective, but call it something else. But going through the 5 phases, setting the scene, what are we talking about, why are we talking about it, making sure everybody's there, not muted, on video if it's online, making sure everybody has said something, gathering data. What do we know about this if we're just looking at the data? Then we start making meaning of the data. Then we decide what to do. If there's something we can do, can we learn something maybe, or can we have some action points? And then we finish it by saying, okay, so what we went through with this, we went to this discussion. These are the things that we learned, or these are the action points we had. So instead of forcing people to go to retrospectives that they hate, try to figure out what they need and then use the retrospective as a structure to communicate about it and to learn something about it. Because the point of retrospectives is to share, appreciate, and learn. Those are the 3 things that are important. And if you are ever in doubt about what to talk about or what to do next in a retrospective, think about these 3 things. How can I improve the sharing, the appreciation, or the learning? And that will give you the answer.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a good answer. And Werner, if you have any further comment on this, then don't hesitate to write it down.
I have something else to say about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
What
Please
Werner
tell
said.
everything.
Because one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was this focus on teams. Everybody has to be in a team. The team is wonderful. We have to build the team. We have to have psychological safety in the team. Not everybody works best in a team. And I think it's a bit sad that we have this extreme focus on having everybody in a team. I think we should appreciate the diversity of people, and some people work best alone, but they will probably need some sort of communication with some people, so that could be part of some of the team's communication, but maybe not all of it. And also, I think that sometimes people are in a team just by name. So they're like sometimes people call themselves with the garbage bin team. We are the people who does not fit in any other team. So that's why we're together. But we're actually working on 7 different things. So when we have the Scrum ceremonies, I'm not interested in hearing what's going on with this and that. It's got nothing to do with me. It's got no impact on what I do. And I think in those cases, it's sad to force people to be in those meetings for so many hours. So the Scrum ceremony should be something that people gain something from. It should be something that if they don't have it, they feel like they're losing something. So for instance, I don't know how many retrospectives I've had where people are saying that one of the worst things is all the meetings we have, all the time we spend in meetings. And in those cases, I think it's a good idea to look at how much time do you actually spend in the meetings. And is it the time spent in meetings that's a problem, or is it the quality of the meetings that's a problem? Because you can have daily meetings for 15 minutes that kill you every day. Like you just feel like the soul is getting dragged out of you. Or you can have 15-minute check-ins every day where people have a chance to talk about what's important for them or if they need any help. And then some people will say, well, I just ask for it if I need help. Yeah, sure, you do. You do that. But a lot of people find it difficult. Again, as I said, some people find it difficult to reflect and to complain outside of a structure for doing it. So I like working in a team, and I like the concept of a team, but I think we are too much in love with that team thing in our software development organizations.
There's a for your example with the it's a team, but everyone works on his own. There was a comment from AFRL. Also, not every group shall be called a team automatically.
Absolutely. And I think that we have a tendency to call everything a team. And when we call somebody who's just a group, maybe working on the same skill or something like that, if we call them a team, then we have a lot of expectations. And I think there's one of the big problems with teams is the expectations. There are some people who are talking about, oh, it's a wonderful, I love my team, we have each other's back. And that's wonderful for you if that's what you have. But a lot of people have less than that in their teams. And then they feel like they're doing something wrong, or there's something wrong with the way that they communicate. Maybe it's just not a team, really.
So AFRL, sorry, has added another comment. He writes, team may be the highest form of social alignment working in a cohesive group. That is a certain level of social quality which I would consider mandatory for groups deserving the term team.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. I agree that a team doesn't become a team just because you call it a team. They need a shared goal. They need to be interested in what the other people in the team are doing, and they need to be able to help each other. Like one of the things that really creates happiness about each other in a team is to help each other. You know that, is it called the Ben Franklin concept or something like that, which is that we know that if you get help from somebody, it's very nice that they help you and you get happy about that. But what is even more powerful is if you help somebody else. Because if you help somebody else, then your brain is thinking, I must like this person. Otherwise, it would be stupid to spend my time and energy helping this person. So your brain is thinking, I must like this person. And then you start liking this person. It's actually as simple as that. So if you help somebody else, you start liking them more. But if you cannot help them, it's difficult to get this liking in. And when I talk about liking, I'm not saying that everybody should be friends. I don't think that people necessarily should be friends when they're working in a team. I don't think that's a prerequisite for calling it a team. But I think that having this impact on each other and this possibility of helping each other is a big part of what creates this feeling of a team, where we have a we and them. And the we and them, of course, there can be problems with that as well, because that can create like the borders between the teams. But as a team who needs to work together and maybe crunch some extra work at some point, or take a negative feedback from somebody else together as a team, it helps to have this feeling of us and them, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. I think what is another good question is, so let's say we have to work as a group or team, whatever we phrase it, and we are working on a shared goal. So technically we have the same goal.
Yeah.
And let's say we have retrospective and we try to do very well and we try to work together very well. But let's say there's one combination of people which doesn't work very well. So
yeah.
There's one person, and everything you do, you can't make working with this person. So do you know what I want to
yeah,
say?
You have somebody where you can say that you don't have the right chemistry with that person. Yes. It's really difficult to find your friendly face when they give you negative feedback, or it's really difficult to continue to be compassionate when they talk about things that they're complaining about.
Yeah.
There are some things.
Can I do anything? So
yeah.
Or do I have to leave the company if it's?
Well, leaving the company can definitely help, but sometimes the problem moves with you as well. I'm not saying you particularly, Lisa, but I'm saying that sometimes if people struggle with people in every team they work in, maybe they should look towards themselves, right? But let's imagine that we have somebody who is usually working well with people, and they have somebody who they just completely struggle to work with. I think that it would be good to reflect on what is it that's happening. Are the bad feelings coming from you, or are the bad feelings coming from the other person? Is it you who's irritated and the other person is completely ignorant of that irritation? Then maybe you have to work with yourself, and you have to work with, how do I relax more in my reactions toward this person's endless questions or something like that? Can you accept that they are like that, and maybe work on your own reactions to how they react? If you cannot do that, then you can think about whether your interaction with them can change. I don't think you should ever think that you could change the other person. That's a task that will just make you frustrated and irritated. Don't expect you to be able to change them. But if you're not able to change your response to the situation, maybe you can change the situation. So maybe you can say, every morning before 12, I don't want to be disturbed. I put this little sign on my desk, or I put this little sign in my channel, and I say that until after lunch, I don't want to be disturbed with questions. So any questions should wait. Of course, that's problematic if that person gets stuck somewhere, if they can't get an answer to the question. But again, you have to make a trade-off of the situation, because if you are in this team, you want to stay in this team, you can't change your reactions to all the questions. You have to change the situation. So change the interaction. It can also be that they are very bad at giving you like reviews, code reviews. Maybe they are very bad in the code reviews. Then maybe you can say, when you give me a code review that's like that, I get this reaction, and that means that I'm not so inclined to following your good suggestions because it makes me irritated or angry. So could you rephrase it? Give them some examples of, if you write something like this or this, it's much more likely that I'll follow your input. So instead of saying, you are being an idiot, you can't write code reviews, you ask too many questions, you say, well, we have to change the way that we interact because it affects me and it affects my work. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. So the first thing I will do is reflecting what is triggering me, or why is the situation like this, and then I have to think on solutions, how to escape the situation in the way that you mentioned with the do not disturb thing before lunch, or I have to confront the other person, but not in a way of really confronting someone, but of talking to. So I think
and I just want to stress that algorithm works if you're the one with the feelings, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you're being reasonable and nice and everything is going well with you and everybody else, but with this person they explode, or they get angry, or they get sad, then maybe the problem is on their side. And maybe you have to reflect on, what is it that I do that make them react in that situation, and maybe talk to them about what is it that I do that makes you react in that way, because I see other people are not reacting in the same way when I do this, so maybe I should do something different around you. So I think it's a good idea to think about, so if we say it's bad chemistry, where does it come from? Like, where do you see it?
Mm-hmm. But these are not topics for the retrospectives. This is a one-on-one conversation.
This is not, yes, because you don't want to call people out on it. This is something that's a one-on-one, and if you find it difficult, maybe you need somebody to talk to together with them. You could ask somebody in the team to be a chaperone or a liaison between you and them, so that you have a third person in the room to make sure that you are sticking to your plan, your algorithm, so that it doesn't get personal. But I think that, I don't know if there are any questions, but we talked about something last time, because I'm teaching teachers how to teach software development at the university, and we talked about what I can take from that into teamwork. But I'm just wondering, before I start talking about that, are there any questions or comments I should react to?
So there are comments, and I don't know if you have to react to. This one is a bit longer ago, so it's from Anne-Therese Frost-Hansen. I love the skeptics. They can be turned into the biggest champions if you listen and address their concerns. This was your hint on handling them. And Anne also told you that it's the Ben Franklin effect, so you remembered correctly.
Good.
And Anders said hello to everyone and to us. So now we are done with all the comments.
Good.
Yeah. So you told in our discussion beforehand, you told me that you are teaching how to teach IT. And my biggest question afterwards was, how did this influence your view and knowledge about teamwork?
Yeah, and I think that was such an interesting question. So I didn't want us to miss that. So I had been teaching software development in academia and in the IT industry for about 16 years. And I had learned some stuff about how I can teach in a better way, but I hadn't really looked into why these things worked. So after those 16 years, I was employed at the university to improve the teaching in computer science, and also do some research in how we teach computer science. And I learned a lot of stuff in how the brain learns and how we can communicate so that people listen and so that they understand, and how we can improve our own learning. And some of these things are actually really applicable when it comes to teamwork in industry. And I can mention a few of them. One is that we talk about, in learning and teaching, we talk about learning preferences, that people have a different preference for how they learn and preference for how they think. And one of them is that some people are what you call active thinkers or active learners, and other people are reflective thinkers or reflective learners. And that means that if you're teaching and you are asking in plenary, like 20 people, how would you answer this? Then the people who are active thinkers, they would answer immediately, because they need to be active to think. And you can also hear it when they talk, that they are thinking while they're talking. But the reflective thinkers, they need to reflect, they need time to think before they can say something. But that means that if we take that back to teamwork, if you have a team and you're discussing something, then the people who are active thinkers, they will immediately start talking, because they need to talk to think. And then you'll never hear from the reflective thinkers, who are often also the introverted people, who really like to have a little quiet time on their own to get their mind in order, and then they can say something. And often when they say something, it's really good because they've actually thought about it before it comes out, while the active thinkers are just, yeah, that's what I meant. Now I understand what I'm saying, right? And if I take this into teamwork, I can use it, for instance, in the retrospective or in discussions about whether to do this or that, I call it using the think, pair, share. The liberating structures calls it 1, 2, for all. That I say to people, think about this for 30 seconds individually in quiet. And that's the thing that can be really difficult for some people. So sometimes you have to say in quiet, right? Think about it. Don't say anything. Just 30 seconds. You can be quiet for 30 seconds, right? And after sometimes it becomes funny and people know who they are, right? So it's a laughing matter, not a problem anymore. And then after they've had maybe 30, and you can sneak 60 seconds in there. People don't count the seconds. So you can sneak 60 seconds in there. And then you say, talk to your neighbor about this. And then they pair up or they talk to the neighbor about it. And what happens there is that now in the silence, the reflective thinkers had a chance to think. The active thinkers now get a chance to think now that they can talk to somebody else. So we cater both for the people on this end of the scale and on this end of the scale. So we're supporting that everybody gets a chance to think and to talk about it. The other thing that also happens is that if people are insecure, that maybe they don't want to share what they think about this, but if they've talked to somebody else about it and that other person didn't look like they were stupid, like maybe it's okay to say this out loud because they didn't think it was stupid, so I can say it to other people. So it also makes it more safe to say something, to share. So that's why I call it think, pair, share, and liberating structures calls it 1, 2, for all, because then the pairs go into force before they share, but you don't really always have to do that depending on the time. So that was one way of taking that into consideration. Another thing that I'm thinking about a lot when it comes to teamwork is the way that the brains are actually learning things. And if we look at Piaget's theory about constructivism, it means that people are constructing their own understanding of things. And that means that if somebody is explaining something to somebody else, like we have a novice who comes into the team, needs to know how to use this system, and the experienced person start talking. But the trouble is that the experienced person are explaining it so that they understand it. They're explaining it the way it looks as a pattern in their head. But then the novice might be able to follow what they're saying because they're intelligent, but it doesn't stick to anything in their brain. It hasn't been constructed as part of their understanding. So when they sleep for a few times, it's gone. And then the expert will have to explain it again. And they sleep and it's gone. And then people get frustrated and we have this chemistry thing running. So if people could accept that if you are explaining something to somebody, you need to make them create their own understanding. So you need to figure out what's in their brains and to figure out how can I attach this to what's in their brains. And of course, you can't look into their brains, but you can ask them, what do you think this reminds you of? Or have you seen this before in any other context? Or do you think we could do this in a different way that would make sense more to the language that you used to use when you were programming? And it doesn't really matter what they answer to these questions. What is important is that they take this thing that the expert is telling them, and they're trying to make associations to what they already have. And that's the important part, that you're not just telling people, but you're asking people to tell you back what they understood, how it reflects in their brains, what it's associated to. And I think that those things, those two things, among all the things that I'm teaching in the teaching course, are very important for teamwork, because it makes us appreciate and understand that other people are thinking in a different way. They need to talk to think. They need to be quiet to think. Or they need an explanation that fits with what they have in the brain. They're not just stupid or not listening or being dumb on purpose. It's actually constructivism. It is the way that we create our understanding that is important to appreciate. And that's also why I'm saying that retrospective should be long, because our brains are mechanical and we need to take that into account. It takes time for us to think, at least with system 2, but that's a different discussion.
Okay. So your second, so I'm totally thinking about all the stuff happened to me around and how I could have improved things with the knowledge you gave me right now. I think the so the first your first example with the reflective learners and the active learners, it made click in a second, because I know some of this sort, and then I thought about retrospectives and how they are actually comforting both types, because you get your paper and you have to write something on the sheet of paper, so the active persons can write right away, so it's like talking, and the other people can sit there, reflect, and then write. So this was in my mind when you were talking. And for the other example with the constructive building in your brain, constructivism, I think this is something which is easy applicable to a one-on-one thing. So when I have a conversation with someone and I have to explain something, then it's pretty easy to ask questions and to make them build their own little castle about what I'm explaining right now. But I don't know why, but I'm more like, let's say we have a team meeting and I have to introduce something new to the whole team, and I can't. So I could, but I think then it would take too long, and then everyone will shut down quite easily. When I would say, yeah, let's start my explanation, and do you know something like this, and then I will go through the whole audience, then it would take too long, and the people who are more in my thought castle thingy are quite bored by how long I take to get everyone on the boat. So are you have do you have any advices, tips, whatever for me when I have to explain something for more than one people to get everyone on my boat?
Yeah. When I have to answer something like that, I always have to go back to, why are you asking me that question, right? So if you are on a one-on-one and it's important for you to get your knowledge across to that person, as you say, it's easy to do this that I just explained. If you are explaining something to a team, maybe you've implemented an algorithm or something like that, and you want them to understand it because it's important for their work, what is it really that you're interested in? Why are you asking this question? And so the answer that I'm coming up with, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you want to make sure that they understand, so you don't have to explain it again and again, and so they don't have to make mistakes. You don't really need to know what is in their heads like you do in a one-on-one situation, but you need to know that they make it click with what they have. So the next step would be, if you don't need to know what's happening in their mind castles, but you just need them to make the connection, you don't need to hear everything from everybody. So what you could do there is that you could actually make a think, pair, share again, where you say, think about how this relates to your work. Think about how you can come up with an example about this. Think about a question you have about this, and then go in pairs, 2 and 2, and then explain it to each other. And if they want to, then you can ask some people to share. And I would be quite certain that if somebody shared an example, or somebody shared that, oh, this is a bit like what we did last year with that database integration, other people will benefit from that again as well. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I had I've looked at the watch, and it's nearly 2, and I'm pretty shocked that the hour is gone.
Okay.
It was like fun. 20 minutes for me. Okay. So unfortunately, we do not have enough time to go through all of the questions we made up in the beginning. But maybe before we end the stream, I would like to ask my finishing question. So what can all of us starting from tomorrow do which will improve our teamwork?
Start with yourself. Figure out what you need from your team members. Think about what you can help them with. Think about if you can ask for help or you can give some help. Start with yourself.
That's a great advice. Thank you so much. And for all the thank you thing, we have a comment from AFRL. Thanks for the wonderful talk today. I can hopefully get some of the good ideas implemented constantly into my own life. Thanks both. So thank you for watching. So I will do the banner again, or the ticker. I don't know how to phrase it, but you can get some discount for the software architecture gathering happening in Berlin, and you can talk to Aino there because she will be there. Thank you, Aino, for being here. It was fun. So it was a pleasure for me to have you here again. I learned very much, and have a nice day and a nice weekend. But it's only Thursday, so I'm a bit confused because we are streaming on Friday and
I know.
Thursday, but okay. So have a nice day. And
I'm glad you could accommodate the Thursday streaming instead of Friday. Thank you very much for taking your time with me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I will end the stream now. Thank you all for joining, and bye.